All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy 2023. My name is Jamie Copes. I'm a tutor training and digital literacy project manager at Wisconsin Literacy. Today, we have training number 3 in a 3-part series from Northstar, and we have Rob Polasek with us from Literacy, Minnesota. So I'm going to let him get started.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. As Jamie said, this is session 3 of the 3. So on session 1, we did an overview of Northstar, sort of the big picture view. And then in session 2, we talked about some of the admin features and tasks that you'll be doing with Northstar. And today is session 3, which is really looking at the student-facing part of Northstar and how you as teachers and tutors can support learners as they work through the Northstar material. So for me, this is the most fun because it lets me put on my teacher hat and share some teacher tips. So this is session 3. So part of me really hopes that you remember everything that we talked about in December. And part of me hopes that your vacations were so good that you remember nothing about what we talked about in December. The reality is probably somewhere in the middle. So again, going through this a third time, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when we talked about that a little bit earlier. So our agenda for today is we'll talk about helping students get logged in. We'll look at the learner dashboard, what the learners see when they log in. We'll talk about how to support assessments. So some students can sit down and just take an assessment without any support. Other people, especially the first time they take it, will need a little bit more hand holding. So we'll talk about how you can do that. We'll look a little bit more at the instructor-led curriculum. In fact, we'll go through a couple of the units so you can experience what that is like. And then we will look at the Northstar online learning modules, how you can use those with students and how you can support them through. And then at the end, Jamie has a little poll that she's going to give you asking what further support you would like from Wisconsin Literacy. So that is our plan. We're going to start with a quick warm up. And one of the nice things about teaching digital literacy to students is you can honestly say, hey, I'm learning too, right? Most of us over the age of whatever didn't grow up with digital literacy skills, so we had to learn these. And as our digital world keeps getting more complicated, we are constantly having to learn new things, like how does that QR code work on the menu? So I'm going to ask you a couple questions and you can just chat them out in the chat box. What digital literacy skill or task are you currently learning? And I have a couple. One is we are moving over to Canvas. So I am trying to learn how to use Canvas, which is extraordinarily complicated at this point in my learning. And then I'm still trying to learn how to do that 2-monitor thing. Haven't gotten there yet. So in the chat box, chat out, what are you learning digital literacy wise? The QR codes, Excel, yeah, OneDrive and SharePoint, all those things that allow us to work remotely. Just the Google stuff. Google kind of has taken over the world. Used to be a Microsoft world. Now Google's popular. Advanced stuff in Excel, which I consider sorting things by alphabet. Yeah, I think something we learned during the pandemic is that phones are kind of the device of choice, or really the device of necessity for a lot of adult education students. So a lot of work with phones. All right, so thanks for sharing those out. And again, I think just like our students are learning more basic digital literacy skills, we're right in there with them, trying to keep ahead of those digital literacy demands. So last time we didn't quite get to talking about reports. And so before we move on with the rest of session 3, I want to do a little bit more of review of what reports are available in Northstar. So you can help me out by sharing in the chat box, what kind of data would you like to glean from Northstar? What kind of reports would be helpful? What kind of data would be helpful as you think about moving forward and having to tell your boss what's happening, having to plan your class? What type of data would be helpful? time on task, proficiency level, certain tasks, skills improvement percentage, hours spent over time. All right, well, I'm going to go to the Northstar site and show you some of the places where you can pull out data. And let's go to Northstar. So there we are, the Northstar site. I'm going to log into my administrator account. So there we are on the home page. And I'm going to go to reports, which seems like a logical way or place to find reports. And this is one place where you can get data. So just going to click here. And the first thing you'll see is a dashboard, a program dashboard. Okay. And this tells me the number of unique users, number of hours that they have spent on Northstar Online, number of assessments taken, number of assessments passed, and percentage pass. So this will default to since the beginning of your program, which is probably not all that valuable for data. So you can filter it by date. So I'm going to go in there and just look at what's been happening since July 1st, which is the beginning of my program year, through December 31st. So I can do that first half of year report. And now it's going to break it down, 20 unique users, 18 hours, 25 assessments, 12 passed, 48% passed. So guessing with real life data, you'll have much more robust numbers. But this is a good snapshot to do the monthly, the quarterly, the bi-yearly report. And at this point, the only filter you can use to sort things or to filter things is date. Another option is the summary report. Click here, and this will give you, tell you which tests people have been taking. And so I can hover over here, and this is going to tell me how many people have taken each of the assessments. I can filter it again by date. I can also filter it by any of the tags that are set up for my program. So this is an advantage of having tags. So let's see if I have anybody in this class. Okay. And so you can see for my class, Rob's class, I can just quickly see how many people have taken each assessment. Okay. And then there's some passing information. So this is good, just again, reporting data. This is what's happening at our site. Detailed reports are really exciting from a teacher's perspective because this lets you know what students have done on the assessment. So I'm going to go to detailed reports, and you will see a list of all of the assessments. And computers change. So when Northstar was created, there was basic computer skills, but now basic computer skills are different. So the legacy reports are there for the old tests, but you're going to look for the new. So I'm going to go to basic computer skills. So this tells me how many people took the assessments. What was that filtered? So 38 people took the assessments. Okay. 10 passed. So, but now I can see which questions were the hardest and which were the easiest. So I look at my class and I'm seeing, okay, most people are getting number 12 wrong. Most people are getting number 23 wrong. Okay. This allows me to tailor my instruction. So as I go through the curriculum or go through that content, I can really hammer the things that people had a hard time with, skim over the stuff that most people got right. And in this case, the class was generally struggling. And so I'm probably going to go through everything a little bit more. Sometimes you'll see assessment data where there are clearly 3 topics, 3 questions that people got wrong. And then you can say, okay, we're going to really focus on the things that most people got wrong. So this, from a teacher's perspective, really exciting. If I scroll down, it will give me a little bit more information. The checks tell me which most students got right. The warning signs tell me which ones I really want to focus on. And then a nice little option. If I click on this, there's a little thumbnail of that particular question. So I can think, okay, that's what they were asked. This is one of the only places in Northstar where things are laid out by question. Usually things are laid out by standard, but here they will tell you which questions people got right, which questions people got wrong. Another place I can get information is the Learner tab. And so I'm going to go over here, and this will show me all of the learners in my program. So this is everybody who has a learner account for my site. And nice little visual here of these icons. So here are the 15 icons. And if they are grayed out, it means that either the student didn't take the assessment or they didn't get a passing score. And if I hover over, I can see that Rob as student didn't get a passing score there, didn't take that assessment. So that just lets me know what a particular student is up to. If the icon is boxed out and it's black and white, that tells me they took the assessment, but it wasn't proctored. So maybe they took it at 3 a.m. because they were bored. And so they got up, took a Northstar assessment, because who doesn't do that? And they passed it. So now I'm going to say, you know what? Do you want to get a certificate? Why don't you take it again? We'll proctor it and you can earn a certificate. And if it is in color, it tells me that that assessment has been proctored. And so they got their certificate and we're ready to move on from that topic. I can sort this by class, so I can use my handy tags. Again, go down to Rob's class. And now just the students in my class are going to show up. Okay. So now that I have my class open, I can look at, well, let's look at that. What's happening with basic computer skills? I'm going to click on that icon. And now I can see what each of those students has done for that particular assessment. I can see who's taken it, who's passed it, and so forth. So that's a really useful way of getting an idea of what my class is up to.
Rob, we have a question in the chat. Is there a way to set favorite reports? The thought here is that you can quickly access reports that work best for your organization.
I do not know that. I will go ahead and ask the Northstar team and then get back to you, Jamie. Reports are something that is really evolving as people ask for new things. So I encourage you to, if you can't find a report that gives you the data that you want, reach out to the Northstar team, because that's how it evolves. Can a proctor take courses under their email, or do they need to set up a whole different account? You can use your proctor account or admin account to be a student. And so you can invite yourself as a student. So you can go in and click on invite new learner and invite yourself using the same email. Or you can go up to the location info and click on manage staff, and then find yourself and toggle this Northstar online access button over. And then that will set up a student account for you. So a couple ways to do it. Both do the same thing. But you don't need to have 2 separate accounts. Same email will work for both a learner account and an admin account. Looking at that learner data again, I can now go to a student. I'm going to go to the Rob as student. He's a great guy. See what he's been up to. And now it's going to give me more detailed information. What the best score was, how many attempts were taken, what they've been doing with the practice lessons, if they've earned a badge or a certificate. And then I can dig a little bit deeper. I'm going to look at that first module. And this will give me the information on what standards they got right and what standards they missed. Okay. So in this case, didn't do very well. So probably want to go back to the beginning with that content. And then every assessment that's taken is archived. So I can go back and look at any of the assessments that my student has taken. But the most recent one will be what's highlighted. There's a button up here that says view usage amounts. And so if you want to keep track of what students have been doing. And so not a lot of data here with the demo account, but scroll down. So this is Rob as student spent 4 minutes on site working on the Northstar Online stuff and 3 hours and 27 minutes working away from. Okay. So sometimes programs want to keep track of that. And you can download a spreadsheet, which is a very messy spreadsheet of all the data. I would encourage you to probably filter out just the students that you want in that spreadsheet, and then you can manipulate that data as necessary. So this is where you find out how much time people are spending on task. And then the last place to find data is the assessment tab. I'll click on this and the assessment results. I can click on view all results. So this will tell me in reverse chronological order what assessments have been taken. So Abriana took the Office PowerPoint, got 23 out of 26. So she got a passing score, wasn't proctored. So I can go through and do all of them. I can filter the results by class, just see what assessments my class have taken. I can sort it by just proctored, just passing, or proctored and passed. So again, ways to look at the action in your program, and then the reports or the here you can download a CSV of what's happened. All right, pause for a second, ask what questions you have after going through where to find data. And if you have questions, go ahead. There's a small group, so please ask them. I'll get to them either as you ask them or eventually, but makes it much more valuable for everybody if you have specific questions. All right, I'm going to go back to the slides. And can you only see data from your organization? Yes, so you will only see data for your particular site. Programs sometimes do set up networks so that there is one network administrator and then lots of different subsites under that. Jamie's raising her hand. So Jamie can see data from all of those sites, but admins for each individual site can only see theirs. All right, so now we'll go back to thinking about Northstar from the student's perspective, and just want to remind people of the Northstar instructional model. It is the test, study, test model. So the idea is a student will come in, take a Northstar assessment, get those results, okay? Then they will study, either coming to class, having a tutor, using the Northstar online units, going home and having their kid help them, their brother help them, whatever it is. And then once they feel confident, comfortable, they'll come back and retest, hopefully get a passing score and earn a certificate. So again, they'll test, taking Northstar to assess their skills. They'll get those results. Based on those results, you will study, and that might be a Northstar class or tutoring. Might be using the individual modules, and then you'll retake the assessment. Okay. Is there a limit to the test attempts? There is 2 in any 24-hour period from one computer. And the idea is we don't want students just taking the test, memorizing the answers, and then moving on, because that's not really an indicator of learning the skills. So Northstar really encourages people to take the assessment and then go work in other materials and then come back and take the assessment as a post-test. And at this point, there's only one assessment for each unit, so it gets used as the pre-test and post-test. So taking it over and over and over again is not that helpful. It's helpful in passing, but not that helpful in learning. And then get your certificate. That's a good segue. Many of the students in our program have not used a computer at all or very limited. What would you suggest to address the model? And that is a good segue into how can you support learners through the Northstar materials. So Northstar is really designed, or kind of designed, so that a student can sit down, log in, take an assessment, look at the results, self-analyze what they need to work on, maybe go to the Northstar online units and work through those things, and then go back and take the test. So it is designed so that somebody can be very, very independent about it. And we do have a lot of people who do that. They go to the library, they sit down, they log into their Northstar account, and they can figure it out on their own. Okay. And then there are other people who don't have the digital literacy skills or the language skills or the reading skills to do that. And I have a picture here of a YouTube video, because there are YouTube videos on absolutely everything, right? And here's a video on how to rebuild a car engine. I'm sure many of you have watched it. And, you know, there are people out there who apparently can log on to YouTube, watch this video, and then rebuild their engine, because they're close enough in their skill set to just need a little bit of push to get there. And Northstar is that for a lot of students. But there are a lot of people who aren't even close. And so they just can't watch a video. They need to start a little bit lower, or they need a little bit hand holding as they walk through the process. And so we're really going to talk about how you can handhold students who aren't able to use Northstar independently. Again, nothing wrong with that video. If you're not able to rebuild an engine watching it, it's just that where the video is and where your skills are, there's just too big of a gap. And if that's the case with your Northstar students, you want to help them bridge that gap. So the first challenge you're going to have with Northstar is logging in, because it requires some digital literacy skills just to set up the account and then to log into the account. And so you can help students there. And the first one is just helping them with that whole registration process. As you no doubt remember from December, students, you'll create a learner account. They'll get email sent to them. They'll respond to that email. They'll have to set a password, a strong password, and that will activate their account. With just the act of accessing email, opening email, reading email, setting a strong password might be beyond what students are able to do. So you can support them in a couple ways. One is to bypass the whole email process. The only time they're ever going to need to use email with Northstar is with that initial registration. So as I mentioned last time, you can bypass that by setting up a dummy email. So when you set up the learner account, if they don't have a real email, or you don't want to have to go through the email, just set up a fake email account, like rob@fakeemail.com. And because it's going to be their user information, you want to come up with something that they can remember, something that you can remember. So programs will usually do something like student's first name, last initial at wisconsinliteracytech.com, or something that's a dummy email address, but easy to remember. Okay. So in the chat, shout out what might you have as the at after the students, the first part. So student's name at, what's it going to be? I had fakeemail.com. What might yours look like? There you go, northstarfake.com. That one will work because it looks like a regular email. There you go, literacyconsole.com. You get the idea. So that's just one way. Having students do this whole registration thing is a very good, authentic digital literacy task. So you may want to help them set up an email, may help them go through that whole process, or you might decide it's just not the battle you want to pick at that point. The other thing that you can do is set the password for them. And so when you get the student information, there is the edit button, and that will allow you to set the student password for them. And so these are the rules. It must contain 8 or more characters, including an uppercase, a lowercase letter, and either a number or a special character. Okay. So what I'd like you to do in the chat box is chat out, what do you think is the easiest password that you can come up with that follows these rules? It's the easiest password that you could come up with. I'm also embarrassed my real life passwords show up on this list too, because Northstar is pretty low stakes data. So coming up with a basic password is pretty good. You probably want to talk about, you don't want this password as your banking password or whatever. Some programs just have every student in the program have the same password. And so your username is unique, but your password is, everybody has the same one just because it's easiest. And then the other thing that you can do is help them come up with strategies for remembering their username and password. So in the chat box, share out what strategies do you have, or what strategies might you teach learners to use so that they just remember their username and password. One program was sharing that whenever the student comes up with their username and password, they'll use a label maker, one of those things that make labels, and then they will put it on the back of their phone, which is hidden by their phone case. And so that's where they keep their password information. Again, probably don't want to do that with banking information, but Northstar information is not that sacred. So place you can cut corners. All right, so let's talk about logging in. We have a lot of Karen students, and so I want to create an activity for this training where people have to create and remember a Karen password that follows those strong rules. And you just think about how difficult it is to remember 8 unique characters. So for some of our students, that is a challenge in itself. All right, so let's talk about the assessments. Again, here is the list. The ones in red are currently available in Spanish. The ones in black will be available in Spanish within the first half of the year. Just announced that there will be a Windows 11 unit created probably in the summer. So that will be a new assessment. That's exciting. Students can take the assessments in any order, although it really makes sense to take those first 3, then whichever operating system is important to you, and then whichever of these software pieces or technology and daily life pieces are of interest. And again, these are quite a bit more difficult in terms of language and critical thinking. And so if you have students with limited digital literacy skills, limited English, probably best to spend a good chunk of time over here before you move into the other units. In order to take an assessment, they need to log on. So that's where they, if the assessments are taken in Spanish, are they translated in English for the teacher? It's the same assessment. And so you can see what's on the Spanish assessment by looking at the English assessment. The results will show up on your page in English. So when you look up at the students' results page, it's going to be in English. So students got to get logged in. This is where they use their email address and their passwords. So you've worked through that whole issue. And when you log into your admin account, you're going to go to this page, which we've spent quite a bit of time on. When the students log into their account, their student account, they are going to go to this page, which is the learner dashboard. And this is a screen cap. We'll go to the live site a little bit later. So we're just talking about the process of getting students to take an assessment. So they have logged in, they have landed on this page. Where do you think they are going to click in order to take an assessment? Take assessment. Again, Northstar made it self-explanatory. And this is, for me, a good example of how Northstar responds. Northstar doesn't have $1 billion to do lots of field testing. So they create something, they release it to the field, and then people react to it and make suggestions and make criticisms, and Northstar makes those changes. And so when this page came out, all of those take assessment buttons weren't there. And for a student to take an assessment, they needed to go up to this little thing, click on the caret, scroll down to take assessments, and then click on that. And feedback was, wow, that's too hard for students to do. Can you make there be a take an assessment button? And Northstar kind of said, hold my beer and put one up here, but also put one for each of the assessments. So each of the topics. So lots of places, it will take them exactly to the same page, which is that assessment page. So some tips for how you can support learners through an assessment, and particularly the first assessment. As I said, often done with a pretest, especially the first one, where learners just need to get used to how the software works. Often done with students with limited English, reading, or digital literacy skills. Okay. And really good to get an idea of what the learner needs help with. And so again, Northstar is set up so somebody can sit down, they'll take an assessment, those assessment results will be saved, and you can look at, well, they had trouble with standard number 12, which is minimizing a window. Okay. Just like any standardized test, I don't know why they got that question wrong. Okay, it could be that they don't know how to minimize a window, or it could be that they misread the question, or it could be that they just clicked on the wrong button by mistake. And so if you have the person power, and this is where volunteer tutors come in really handy, if they can sit and observe somebody taking the assessment, that will give them some additional information on top of what the assessments give you. So it's a luxury that not all programs have, but it is a really nice thing to just be able to watch someone take an assessment and figure out what's going on. In terms of how much support you can give them, well, you want it to reflect their digital literacy knowledge. So if you're helping them with English, that seems fair, because that's not getting in the way of you measuring their digital literacy skills. So I think especially for a pretest, help them with everything short of saying it's answer B, right? Don't just tell them the answer. Give them whatever support they need, but make them answer the digital literacy question legitimately. If it is a post-test, then you should back off and make them take that assessment independently, so that they can earn that certificate legitimately. So first thing, sit down with a student, explaining why they're having them take the assessment. Some people hear assessment and they just freak out. It's a test. I don't want to take an assessment. In St. Paul a couple of years ago, we had a program with the county and the library where we gave away a free laptop, a year of hotspot service. All you needed to do was take the first 3 assessments. And we had people say, nope, I don't want the computer because I don't want to have to take an assessment. They were so worried about taking an assessment. So first thing you're going to need to do is explain, why are you having them take an assessment? So if you have a test taker ask you, why do I have to take this assessment? What would you tell them? What's the advantage for them of taking an assessment? Go ahead and chat out your thoughts. To show how far you've come. Yeah. Benchmark to measure your progress. Yeah, it's kind of nice. It tells us what you already know, right? As opposed to what you don't know. It tells us what you already know. So again, pretest to see what you know. Is there a way to skip to the end of the assessment if they can't do the first couple of questions? Yep, and I'll talk about that in a couple seconds. They let us know what you need to work on, shows what you know going in. Scroll to the next slide. So ignore the animation. Oh, don't have the slide activated. So I just have a list here. Determine what your needs are. I'll save some time because we're only going to work on the stuff that you need to work on. So we're not going to review all the stuff that you already know. Gives you a chance to view progress. Talking about how you can use these assessment results and the certificate to build your resume and your cover letters. And it's good practice just taking a computer-based test. We have one program that isn't really that interested in the Northstar content, but they have the learners take the assessments because they want them getting good at taking a computer-based test so that when they take the GED test online, they'll be able to do it. Help them get logged in, as we've talked about quite a bit. Okay, explain what the assessments are, how they work. So you're probably going to walk through the first one. Okay, and then monitor and support as appropriate. So again, don't tell them the answers, but help them navigate the experience. And then you're going to want to debrief the results. Okay, what does it mean that you got 50%? What does it mean that you got 40%? What do I do with that data? All right, so let's go to the live site. I'll log into my student account. There I got the dashboard. Let's see an assessment I haven't taken. Haven't taken Windows, so I'm going to take the Windows assessment. Click on Take Assessment. It will take me to the assessment page, with all of the assessments listed. And again, you can see the value of being able to sit down with the student and walk them through this piece. And I'm going to take Windows. It starts out with a little sound test. Speakers get really good at clicking the next button because I get sick of hearing that.
This video will show you how to take a Northstar assessment. If you already know how to take an assessment, click Skip Orientation below.
So
for each,
there's a nice little 2-minute video, 2.5-minute video that talks about how the Northstar assessments work. And just like watching the YouTube video on how to rebuild an engine, that might be enough for students to figure it out. Other students need a little bit more hand holding. So if I have the luxury of being able to sit down and work with the student one-on-one for this assessment, I'm going to skip the video and sort of explain the things to them myself. So we're going to go ahead, skip orientation. Start the assessment. I'm going to let the first question play.
Select the correct answer. Which of these is an operating system?
Okay. So nice thing about the Northstar assessments is that the format is consistent across all of the assessments. So walking them through how it works at the beginning will carry them through all of the rest of them. So here is the question. Okay, so correct. And they can hear it again.
Select the correct answer. Which of these is an operating system?
So students, it's helpful to know that everything that's on the screen is going to be read to them in terms of the question. It's also on the screen because sometimes they'll say, well, I didn't hear it. Well, you can also read it or you can play it again.
Select the correct answer. Which of these is an operating system?
So explain that. Another useful feature is this arrow. This will enable enter full screen model or mode. And so you really want your students to do that so that the assessment is full screen, because there are some questions that will say, click on the X to close the window, and they'll click on the X for their browser. and that just shuts down the whole assessment. And so if you do that, the browser will disappear, and the biggest X will be the one in the assessment. Volume, closed caption is enabled, but since everything is red, that tends to be redundant. Number of questions, people like to keep track of what's going on. And then the I don't know button. And the Northstar assessments are designed to tell us what you know and what you don't know. So I always explain to students that if they don't know, don't guess. Click I don't know. Because if they guess and they happen to get the right guess, then we don't know that they have to work on that skill. So unlike the GED test, where I do tell students, guess if you don't know the answer, just guess. On this test, if you don't know, click I don't know. That gives us really valuable information. Okay. So I'm gonna click I don't know.
Select the picture of the computer that is using a Windows operating system.
Okay. So another really nice feature is the ability to go back to previous questions. So if I go up to this little menu here, it's going to show me the current question, identify Windows, and then the previous question. Okay. So sometimes maybe the student answered the question like, oh, wait, that was the wrong answer, or they misclicked. They can go back and re-answer the question. So I'm going to go back.
Select the correct answer. Which of these is an operating system?
I didn't answer that the first time.
Select the picture of the computer that is using a Windows operating system.
All right, now I'm going to go back and look at it, and it's going to ask me if I want to change my answer or continue to the next question.
Select the picture of the computer that is using a Windows operating system. Open the application named Get Help. Use the search box to find and open Skype.
All right, I'm going to quickly go through, and somebody asked, is there something that if they get a couple questions, they don't know, you can just click I don't know for the rest of the questions.
Select the open mic. Click on the desktop in the picture. Click on the taskbar in the picture. Open Microsoft Word. Maximize the window. Minimize the window. Switch to the open document called Cover Letter. For this question, open the cloud. Use sign out of the account in the picture. Restart the computer in the picture. Shut down the computer in the picture.
All right. That's why my scores are so terrible, because I do that during webinars. So got to the end. And so before they submit their answers, students will have a chance to go back and re-answer any question that they answered unanswered. Okay. Again, they also have the opportunity to go back and change their answer for any question. So again, I think if you truly want to know what your students' digital literacy skills are, I think working with them and saying, do you want to change any answers or whatever, that's going to give you more correct data. And no, I'm done. I don't know any of those answers. I'm going to submit answers now. And the results page will show up. Passing score, 85%. So I did not pass. It will tell me which skills I mastered, which are all of 1, and which skills I need to improve. And again, I want to point out that this is not question number 1. This is standard number 1. So that always confuses people. I know I got that first question right. That was an easy question. Or I know I got that second question right. That was an easy question. That's not what this is showing. This is showing that standard 2 was a problem. And that might be question 4, might be question 6, or it might be part of question 2 and 5. You never know how it's laid out. Students will often want to have a picture of this. So if you click on print results, it will give them, show up in PDF form, which they can print out, but it also gives them something small enough that fits on the screen that they can take a picture of, which I found is really valuable for students. Yeah, that's a good thing. It's like if they're struggling with the assessment, you know, you can just stop it and say that we got enough information. So that's fine. The disadvantage of that is that test data won't be saved. So you won't capture the 1 or 2 questions they got right. But I agree that if they're really struggling, you probably just want to stop the assessment right there. The other thing is, I think as you do the sign-in process and all of that, you're going to get a pretty good idea about whether or not the student's ready to take an assessment to begin with. And if they're struggling just with that whole process of getting signed in and navigating to the assessment, that tells you we know they need basic digital literacy skills. There's no reason to put them through the assessment. Somebody noticed those. If you want to work on the skill, do you simply hit the practice button? Yeah, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but you're looking at this sheet, and after the mastered skill, there is this little dumbbell. So you're going to build your digital literacy muscles, and you can click on the dumbbell. And that'll take you
The Windows 10 operating system has many parts.
directly to the Northstar online.
The desktop is the main screen you see after you turn on your computer.
No, you don't need to do an assessment first. If you know that they're struggling, then there's no need to give an assessment because you've already assessed that information. I want to show you another piece that is helpful. I'll log into my admin account. And for students who are below the level of that first assessment, Northstar has created some print screeners, some paper screeners. And so if you go to resources and other resources, and scroll down to the bottom of the page, there are 2 screeners. The first one works really well for a large group. So you're passing this out like to a class and having the students do it. So it looks like this, right? They have a worksheet, circle the laptop. So they don't have to interact with a computer at all. They are interacting with a piece of paper. You can read the directions if they don't have the reading skills. Do they know what a laptop is? And they circle it. So this is something that you could use with a group of students. And then there's another screener where you'd actually sit down in front of a computer and you would ask them questions like, is this a desktop or a laptop computer? Point to each of the things. Same questions that the Northstar assessment will ask them, but you're doing it in person with them. So helps get around those language problems, helps get around those digital literacy issues. And again, those are in the resources tab under other resources. So once the student has taken an assessment and gotten their results, you want to debrief them with them. And so really ask them first, what did you think of the experience? Were you surprised by your results? Like, no, I don't know what the toolbar is. I've never known what the toolbar is. So that can get you really good data. Asking them what they would like to do next, what they would like to focus on next. I'd really like to learn this skill. I'd like to learn this skill. I'd like to learn this skill. And then talking about what learning options are available in your program. So after a learner has taken an assessment, what are their options in your program? Do you have tutoring available, classes available? Are you going to have to do the online modules? If you know what instruction looks like at this point, go ahead and chat that out. So definitely, like any skill, one-on-one is kind of the gold standard. It's nice to have somebody who can focus on your particular needs, especially if you have older students. You're talking about some of the tutors have like digital literacy skills too, encouraging them just to take the assessment and get comfortable with the technology themselves is good. Having tutors work through the curriculum or work through the Northstar online units with students is also really good, because everything that the tutor needs to know is in the curriculum or in the Northstar online units. So they just have to sort of guide people through. And it's just like, you don't have to know everything about how math works in order to do basic math tutoring, right? Same is true with computers. Tutors probably have enough digital literacy skills to teach basic digital literacy skills. All right, now we're going to talk about the resources that are available for instructors, so for teachers or for tutors. And last time we talked about the instructor-led curriculum. Northstar has finally, at the last month, they added the 15th curriculum unit. So now there is curriculum for each of the topics. And so that's great. Available under the resources tab on the admin dashboard. As I said last time, the content is different across all of those units, obviously, but the routine is the same. And so every lesson will start with a warm-up, which is a little bit of a pre-assessment to get an idea of what they know about that specific topic. Sometimes it's a chance to get them thinking about how they already use this skill in real life. They'll go over the objectives. This is what we're going to learn. Then Northstar follows direct instruction or explicit instruction. So the teacher or the tutor will model and explain a concept. Okay. Then the teacher and the students will work through the skills together. And then there'll be some independent practice, and Northstar is really set up for a lot of group instruction, pair instruction. So if you're working one-on-one, you'll need to adapt the pair explore to one-on-one explore. There's always some type of a task, because you don't learn digital literacy skills. You don't learn how to use Word without using Word. And so it'll be go in and type something, or go in and edit something, or whatever. Lots of emphasis on vocabulary. Lots of people know how to do things. They just didn't know what those things were called. And I guarantee as you go through the Northstar stuff, you're going to go, oh, I didn't know that had a name, or I didn't know that's what its name was. I was calling it something else. So always good to work on that vocabulary. And then the wrap up is a little post-test, little exit ticket. What have you learned today type of activity. So we're going to go through a couple of lessons, parts of a couple lessons, just to give you an experience of what it feels like to be the student. So we're going to go first through basic computer skills. So the first unit, lesson 4, and there is a lesson on fixing typos. So we're going to look at the warm-up activity for that lesson and the vocabulary work activity for that lesson. So put on your student hats, and I'm going to ask you the question and a couple sentences here. So what I would like you to do is read those 2 sentences. And then when you have finished reading those 2 sentences, send me a private message letting me know that you are done. So change to everyone to Rob Polasic, and let me know that you are done. And this is just a little teacher tip that I have used when I teach online, because sometimes I wonder, is anybody still awake out there and paying attention? So I will check that by having people send me a message with a simple question, and that lets me know who is active and who isn't. And looks like everybody's active, so good job. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Again, send me a private message with the answer to this question. How many capital letters are there? So again, this is the warm up, but it's also a little pretest. Do my students know what capital letters are? And it looks like most people do. Another question, what symbols other than letters and numbers do you see in those two sentences? So what symbols do you see? This is an interesting one because I realize that it tests different skills based on if you're doing it orally or if you're having them type. Because if we were in class and I asked you that question, you would have to tell me the names of those symbols. Okay. If I had you type in the chat box, you would have to find those symbols on the keyboard. So it's actually two different skills. So just want to check vocabulary here. So could somebody unmute and tell me what the name of this symbol is? What is this called?
Ampersand.
Ampersand?
At.
Or the at symbol. So I might have to talk about what that's actually called. What is this symbol called?
Parentheses.
Parentheses. Good. So you see that having to say it out loud is a test of vocabulary as opposed to typing it on the keyboard, which is a test of keyboard knowledge. Both are valuable. And then the last question is, what special keys would you need to type these sentences? So again, if I had you tell me out loud, it'd be a vocabulary thing. If I had you type it, it's a little bit of a typing lesson. Okay. I could just show me on the keyboard what key that would you click. So depends on how you're teaching this lesson, what skill you're getting at. So you can see how that little warm up is kind of a pretest of what students already know about the concepts you're going to go into. And we're going to skip to the vocabulary lesson, which is a little bit of review. So actually, aspersand versus ampersand. Now I'm going to have to look that up. That's the fun of doing this. You learn new things. So we've gone through the lesson. Now we're going to do a little review. And so into the curriculum is built a nice little worksheet. So you don't have to create this. You just need to print it out and give it to your student. If you're in person or if you're online, you can put it on your screen or copy and paste and put it into your PowerPoint presentation. I could activate annotation feature for everybody and you could draw the lines between. I could call on somebody to tell me the answer. I'm going to, in the chat box, send me a private chat telling me which number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 is used to make a new line. So which key 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 is used to make a new key or new line. And some of you are being good students typing out the word. That's always good practice to have them type it out. Oh, let's ask it a different way. Which of these functions, A, B, C, D, E, or F, is done by the arrow keys? So if I use the arrow keys, which function does it do? A, B, C, D, E, or F? All right, so you get the idea, basic worksheet, and then you can adapt it to online instruction by changing the way you ask the questions. Let's look at another lesson. We're going to look at using email, lesson 7, which is on spam and phishing. So in lesson 7 of the email unit, there is that piece on internet security. And then later on, Northstar added that entire unit on your digital footprint and safety and things like that. So we're going to do lesson 7 on phishing, and we're going to look at the warm up, the model and explain, the do it together piece, the pair explore, and then the wrap up. So for these next questions I'm going to ask you, I want you to think about not using the computer, but just in regular life. I want you to think about in regular life, how you do this outside of the computer, okay? So the first one, 2 questions there, just answer the first one, is how do you keep information like credit card or social security numbers safe? So how do you keep that information safe in real life? Go ahead and type out your thoughts. So this is an interesting assessment for me because I can see some of you have a lot more digital literacy savvy as you talk about, don't use the save card option. Second question, how do you decide if a business is reputable, meaning good or bad? And don't just think of online, think about in real life. How do you decide if a business is reputable? All right, and one more question. What can you do to prevent theft? What can you do to prevent theft? And again, I can see some of you going right to digital literacy world. Others of you are thinking about the non-digital world. So this warm up is a little bit different. It's assessing, it's sort of getting students to think about, I know if somebody walks up to me on the street and says, what's your social security number? I'm not going to give that to them. But then if somebody online asks us for it, we just type it out because they're online, right? And so taking those skills that you have to navigate the real world, the concrete world, and transferring them to the digital world, which seems to be something that a lot of us struggle with, right? If I see it online, it must be true, where I wouldn't believe it if somebody on the street told me the same thing. So talking about that transference of skills I have over here into the digital realm. So lesson 7 looks at spam. The first part is looking at spam, and the second part is looking at phishing. So we're going to skip over the spam part, and we'll talk about phishing. I'm going to grab my teacher notes here. All right, so I'm just going to read the script here. You might get an email that looks like it's from a reputable website like Netflix, Facebook, or your bank. And it might ask you for private information like a password or a credit card number. However, the email is actually from a thief and not from Netflix or Facebook. This is called phishing because the thief is phishing for your private information. So has anyone had experience where somebody has done this, where they've asked you an email for your private information? If you have, you can go ahead and chat it out, or you can unmute and tell the group what your experience was. Oh, you have phishing tests. Good for you. All right. So some of you have some experience. Some of you might not have as much experience. So those of you with experience, please share out what you know. And Deborah's already getting into some of the ways to know if phishing is phishing. So phishing emails look like emails from important people or organizations like a bank, Amazon, Facebook, or Gmail. However, there are some things about them that are suspicious. Suspicious means something looks bad or seems untrustworthy. And there are some clues that might make an email suspicious. So it doesn't have your name. It only says, dear customer, or on this one, it says valued customer. So if the email is not directed at you, that might be a sign that it's phishing. Okay. There might be spelling or grammar mistakes. Okay, so that might be an indication that it's a phishing email. Okay, it might ask you for important information like your password or your phone number. Okay, or it's from a company that you don't use. Wells Fargo warns me twice a week that my account is going to be deactivated, but I know that's phishing because I don't have a Wells Fargo account. So that's a client. Okay. And you guys got lots of examples, which is great. And students will probably have lots of examples as well. Okay. And again, here are some of the things that we talked about. Doesn't have your name, or it has an old name or your maiden name. Okay. A fake email address. Right, so here is an example of email. And I'm going to decide, is this spam, or is this phishing, or is this legit? And so what clues can I pick out? Well, the name is blank, so that is probably a good sign that it is phishing. Oops, phishing. Okay. Oops, Windows covering it. It's taking me to another website. That's also a good sign that it is phishing. So let's look at this one. What are some signs that this might be phishing? Go ahead and chat out your thoughts in the chat box. So Anna found the fake email that linked to another site. Thanks, we're auditing you. That's kind of a good sign. Yeah, there's a good one. IRS sends postal mail. They'll never email you. They will never call you. They're going to send it in the postal mail. So that's just a sort of above and beyond the Northstar stuff, this particular lesson, just a good tip. So after I have modeled and I have gone through a couple asking you, there is the independent practice, which is a pair explore. And if I weren't really lazy, I would make breakout rooms and put you into pairs and have you do this activity, but I'm lazy today. So we're just going to do this as a full group activity. It's just a repeat of what we've just done. But again, in real life, you'd be doing this without me helping you. And so here's a worksheet already created for you. You just need to give it to the students. You'd have them work in pairs or in groups or however you want them to work. And answer this question. Is it suspicious? Yes, no. And then show your work. Why? So let's look at the first one. Do you think this is suspicious? And then yes, or why do you answer yes or no? And just like with everything else, students will always tell you the answer, but skip over the show your work part. So justify your answer. Why do you think? Okay. Got some specific info there, got some real names, or assuming. It's not asking for personal information. Let's look at the second one from Facebook team. All right, so you guys are doing well. We won't do the rest of them. Second part of this lesson is talking about what can you do if you suspect something is a spam email. So, sometimes you get them and you're like, this could be legit. It could be fake. What could you do if you get a phishing email? Go ahead and shout out. What are some of the ways you could check to see if it's legit? How could you follow up with it? So, if you're pretty sure it's spam, then delete it and let your IT department know so they can block that. Check the sending email to see if it's legit. We had some that came from our executive director, and all you needed to do is look to see the email, and it wasn't his email, and so that was an easy check. And we had several literacy employees fall for it. Contact the program directly, which is a good strategy. If it's from your bank, contact your bank, log into your bank account directly, and you'll get that information. It's funny. 25 years ago, I would do lessons on how to determine if junk mail you got in the postal mail was legitimate or not. And now I'm doing lessons on how to determine if email is legitimate or not. So we've had this issue for a long time. Same strategies apply with print email or with print mail as with regular email. Okay, and then there's a little exit ticket activity. I won't have you do this, but just after you've gone through those two pieces, then you can ask the students to answer one or both of these questions as the wrap-up activity, as the exit ticket activity. All right, so that was just a little taste of what a couple of the lessons look like in Northstar. They are all scripted out, and if I haven't spent hours preparing, I can just pick up the lesson and walk through it. All the handouts are there. What I need to say is there. What I need to write on the board is there. So really designed for novice teachers, people who haven't taught a lot, but also people who aren't expert on digital literacy topics. So those volunteers who feel a little nervous, this is who the curriculum is designed for. Obviously, the more advanced your teacher skills are, the more you're probably going to take this, use it as a base for what you ultimately end up teaching. All right, we're going to shift over and talk about those Northstar online learning modules. A lot of programs said, we don't have teachers and tutors who can lead classes, do tutoring. And so is there something that Northstar can create that students could work through on their own? And so Northstar started creating the Northstar online learning modules. The first one got released coincidentally the week the pandemic started, or the week that everything shut down for the pandemic. So it was really useful. They have been adding, so now they're up to 11, I think, with 4 in Spanish. And the commitment is that the rest will be done the first half of this year. And so these are great for students to work through independently. They're also great for tutors and students to sit down together and work their way through. Access them through the learner dashboard, which we looked at a little bit earlier. Looks like this. You got the Take Assessments button that people were clicking on to get to that assessment page, but the lessons page will get them to the actual lessons. So I'm going to escape here, and we're going to do something a little bit different. So we're going to go, I'm going to put in the link to the main page. And in order to access most of the lessons, the online learning lessons, you need to have a student account. But there are a few of these lessons that are up there available to everybody. Northstar, because of the funding stream, decided to make some of the lessons free. So I'm at the Northstar Digital Literacy Assessment.org page. I'm going to click on Build My Skills. And the first 4 units, basic computer skills, email, Microsoft Word, and career search, are available on the public site, free to anybody. The rest you'll need a subscription for. So I would like you to go to the main website, click on Build Your Skills, and then decide which of these 4 units looks the most interesting to you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And I'm going to give you 10 minutes just to sort of work your way through the Northstar Online units so that you have a feel for how they work. And then we'll talk about how to help students use them. So gives you 10 minutes. That brings us back at 17 minutes to the hour. If you're having trouble getting there, let me know in the chat or by unmuting. Otherwise, see you back in 10 minutes or so. So these are, again, designed to be independent practice modules. It might be what students use to learn the skills, or it might be what they do after you've had the in-person lesson or the live lesson. Now they can follow that up by doing the Northstar Online lesson. The nice thing about these is they can do them over and over and over again. Back in the day when we only had the assessments, students wanted to take the assessments over and over and over and over again because they needed to do something to practice. We discouraged them from doing that, but my students want to take these over and over again. I'm like, go for it. You know, the more practice, the better. I'm going to talk about the dashboard a little bit before I look at the assessments. Dashboard's a little confusing, maybe because there's just so much information there that students get overwhelmed. So you might need to guide them to how to work their way through. The first question is, how are you going to change this to Spanish? If you have a student who wants to do these units in Spanish, what do you think you're going to click on? Took me a while to figure this out, so I'm going to see if you guys are more on top of it than I was. Click on your name. That was what I tried. That doesn't do it. Ah, you got it. Student profile. So yeah, that's help doesn't do it either. So profile, ultimately, I just went right to left and figured it out. So there is my profile, and there is the button to switch it over to Spanish. And now if I go, it'll be in Spanish, but only the Northstar units that are current Northstar Online units that are currently in Spanish will show up. I'm suggesting to the Northstar team that they put a button that says language, because that's how it looks on the assessment page. So hopefully they'll take my feedback. So the navigate to the lessons, just thinking about how I tell students to get there, especially if I'm trying to explain to them over the phone or over email. Go to basic computer skills, click on lessons. That'll take you to this page. And unlike the free page, which sort of forced you to go through everything in order, this will allow you to pick and choose. Okay. So the student may scroll through and see what topics they're interested. More likely the teacher or tutor is going to say, I want you to click on the how to control a computer. As we saw earlier, these are also tied to the assessment. So if I go to assessment history and click on one of my assessments, it's going to give me that results page with the link to the part of the lesson that it covers. I find that most students just want to go through everything in order, but if you have a student who only needs to work on a couple topics in order to pass the assessment, you might want to direct them specifically to that particular unit. And even though it says practice complete, you can still go through it a gabillion times.
There are
The other nice thing is it looks exactly like the assessment, right? The next button, the go back to previous questions, to play the sound again, the question again. So gives them extra experience with that test format. And then the last thing I want to say is, even though these are designed for independent learning, notice that the name independent isn't in the name. It's Northstar Online, because some students need somebody to sit down and help them through. And so these are great. As a tutor, I love using these because they're so easy to use. And so I'll just get my student to log in. And let's just do the first one. What are computers?
You're probably sitting in front of a computer right now. But what exactly is it? And what can you do with it? What is a computer? A computer is a machine for communicating with people and working with information. What can you do with a computer? A lot. Talk to friends, find entertainment, talk to family, search for jobs, go shopping, organize information.
Skip that for a second. So when I have a page of text like that, I can do a comprehension check just like I would for any page. I could say, what is a computer? What are some of the things you could use a computer for, and so forth, just to check to see if they understood what the page of text was telling them. Same as with a video. You can watch the video together, and then you can ask some follow-up questions about the video.
If you look closely at the outside of a computer, you will see buttons and many small holes. These holes are usually called ports. Each port has a specific shape for different uses and different types of plugs.
So what's a comprehension question that I could ask my student after they have listened to or read this page? What's a little comprehension question I could ask them? Doesn't explicitly say that, but you could ask. Checks to see, oh, there's a headphone port. I think the main topic is, what are those holes called? So it's a vocabulary piece. So I could say, what are the holes in the back of a computer called? Ports. Or what are ports? Ports are the holes in the back of a computer. So again, I can sit down, work with them, check their comprehension, explain anything that they didn't get on their own.
Here is a flash drive that you can plug into a computer. Click on the port that matches it.
So for these activity questions, usually what I'll ask students is, what are you supposed to do? Check their comprehension of the question. What are you supposed to do? I'm supposed to do whatever. So that's always a good way to help them through. It's also something I'll do a lot when they're going through the assessment. If I just want to make sure they understand the question. So I'll say, what are you supposed to do? Okay. I had a student one time, we were doing it and it said, minimize the window. And I said, what are you supposed to do? And he says, maximize the window. I'm like, tell me again, tell me again, tell me again. It wasn't he understood how to minimize and maximize. He was just being sloppy reading the question. So again, even though it's designed for independent practice, lots of opportunities, and it's great for students to sit, or tutors to sit with the students, provide that additional scaffolding. And then there are little mini quizzes. I'm not sure if you got to one in the lessons that you were doing, but after a few units, there will be a little mini quiz. They're called review questions.
If you look closely at the outside of a computer, you will see buttons and many small holes. These holes are usually called ports. Each port has a specific shape for different uses and different types of plugs.
In Northstar, you also learn about opening lots of tabs because Northstar opens everything in a tab, and you get into a little lesson on tab management. All right, last thing is, just want to go back. Yeah, that is a problem. It's not going to tell you which questions you got right or which questions you got wrong. It's just going to send you back and do it. So again, that's really useful to work with a tutor so they can monitor what you're answering and sort of guide you through. So that is an issue that people have had. It doesn't tell you got this question wrong. It just says, nope, go back and try again. Also a good lesson of don't just give the same answer and over again if it's telling you it's wrong, right? Good little test taking strategy. And then just again, want to remind you of the resources tab, which has the curriculum, which we talked about, has the print screeners if you have students who are below the level of Northstar, the manual that you can print out. Also, everything is hyperlinked. So that is available for you. Mine is printed out next to my desk. The videos are in the manual. They're also pulled out here. So if you want to watch the how-to videos, they're right there. Information about proctoring is in the middle here. Under other resources, there is some promotional material. So if you're looking for materials that you can use to promote your program, here's an example. And it will link to the Northstar site, but you can personalize it. So that's available. And then again, the support ticket, if you have a question, if you have a suggestion, if you're having a problem, reach out to the Northstar team. You can click on the create a support ticket. It's going to ask you to do your due diligence because the Northstar team is pretty small, about 7 full-time equivalents. But if you still need help, go ahead and send them a question, and allows you to indicate if it's a problem, if it's a question, or if you have a suggestion for how to make Northstar better. And again, I can't reiterate enough, every change that has happened at Northstar has come because people have made the suggestion or the request. So please keep Northstar growing by making those requests. All right, I am done with my part. So I'm going to pass it back to Jamie, who has a little poll for you.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Feel free to continue to put them in the chat box.
All right, thanks a lot, Rob. I want to thank everybody here for the time that you've dedicated to attending these trainings or watching the recordings. As of today, we have 19 Wisconsin literacy members subscribed to Northstar. So we are a substantial network, but we are a diverse network. So that encompasses very small, all volunteer programs, medium-sized programs, and large programs. And we're also diverse in how we've gotten started implementing Northstar. So some of you have jumped in and offered it to your tutors and your students, and some of you have sort of waited until you've taken these trainings to figure out exactly how you're going to roll this out. So the poll I'm going to launch right now is just 2 questions, and it's going to ask you how Wisconsin literacy can best support you in your next steps. So the first question is talking about, do you want a community of practice where those 19 Wisconsin literacy members can meet or share ideas? And then the second question is asking you about training topics that might best support your next steps. It looks like some people have answered other to those training topics. So if you feel comfortable putting those suggestions in the chat right now, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, I just put my email in the chat. Please feel free to email me at any time with some ideas or Northstar questions as well. I'll just share the results in case you're interested. Looks like training tutors and using Northstar with English learners are big needs. And perhaps we will start a community of practice via Zoom. All right. Thank you again, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, reach out to me with any questions.